I use he, him, él pronouns. I'm an associate faculty member and assistant director for the Prescott College Tucson Center. I want to acknowledge that I work and reside on the traditional and unceded homelands of the Tohono O'odham and Yoeme people. Before we begin, there's a translation services available by clicking on the interpretation icon located at the bottom, where you can select an English or Spanish channel. This meeting will also be recorded and made available on our Prescott College YouTube channel after the meeting. Let's begin. Thank you for joining us for our third and last fall workshop series presentation. I will be your moderator for today's presentation, focused on Indigenous food sovereignty, Barrio farming, and urban sustainability. This workshop coincides with my urban environmental justice class, which is currently taking place at the Tucson Center, and which I see some of our current students attending this workshop. To contextualize our workshop today, it's important to recognize that climate change and the ongoing pandemic have put a spotlight on food security once again. More than ever, we have learned how fragile our food systems can be and how communities can work toward a sustainable future. We know that our foods represent resistance, culture, and politics. Today, we will listen and learn from the community experts, activists, organizers, as they talk about their work as Indigenous farmers working to take control of their food system. Our first presenter is Mónica Velasco. Mónica is originally from Oaxaca, Mexico. Mónica is a leader and community organizer with Paisanos Unidos, a protection network in Tucson that aims to empower community members to know their rights. Through Paisanos Unidos, Mónica is part of a network of leaders from Las Milpitas and Nuestra Tierra Community Garden. Our second presenter is Joshua Preston. Joshua is a member of the Tohono O'odham Nation and lives in the Walk District of the nation. Throughout his academic years, he spent time in agriculture classes, starting at the San Xavier Mission School and continuing through high school at Changemaker High School. He now works at the San Xavier Cooperative Farm, located in his home district, and currently serves as the irrigation operator. Our third presenter is Alfonso Chavez. Fonz identifies as a Chicano Indigenous social environmental justice advocate, working to deconstruct colonial structures through sustainability, art, and rebellion to liberate, heal, and empower his community. He's a member of Flowers and Bullets and works at the nursery as the nursery coordinator at the San Xavier Cooperative Farm. I'm now going to share my screen here. Let's see. I have Monica's presentation. ¿Estás bien, Mónica? ¿Sí puedes ver la presentación? Okay.
Sí, la siguiente página. Si quieres moverte. A otra página. Buenas tardes. Ok. Buenas tardes a todos. Pues me da gusto estar aquí presente y que ustedes estén presentes y tomen interés en este webinar. Todos y todas vamos a aprender juntos, entonces sí, compartir sabiduría de todos y todas, de nuestras tradiciones o de lo que hemos aprendido. Entonces, esta primera foto para mí es muy importante porque me da a conocer y y da a presentar de que todos tenemos derecho de respirar un aire limpio, de tener un agua limpia, de tener acceso a comida, de tener un trabajo justo y digno, de tener salud, educación, vivienda digna y, y tener felicidad, ¿no? Que es lo primordial, de que todos somos felices para vivir en un mundo mejor. Y creo que todos y todes nos, nos unimos y trabajemos juntos para tener una mejor comunidad y sustentabilidad. Pasamos a la siguiente. Ok, la historia del maíz. Yo sé que a veces es un poquito difícil tener esa costumbre de contar nuestras historias o porque a veces no estamos acostumbrados y hemos perdido esa tradición de contar historias. Entonces, para mí es muy importante que todos sepamos el origen del maíz. Y el maíz tiene, ya data del año 300 antes de Cristo, y viene por una especie salvaje del maíz que se llama teocintle. Es muy común en la área de lo que es de México y todavía existe. Entonces, el maíz es algo muy sagrado porque todavía existe su madre en la actualidad y el maíz presente. Del teocintle se encuentra la primera descendencia del maíz en el valle de Tehuacán y en Oaxaca, donde a lo largo de toda Mesoamérica se puede localizar lo que es las variedades del maíz, que son 64 variedades que se encuentran hasta la actualidad en nuestro país. 59 de ellas son nativas, 9 de ellas son de maíz palomero, que ya está en extinción, igual a otras variantes. Y eso significa que una, se está dejando de sembrar, otra, está entrando maíz, otro tipo de maíz que está afectando al maíz original. Entonces, voy a hablar, ¿quieres pasar al siguiente slide? Por favor. Entonces, aquí podemos mirar las 64 variantes del maíz y como cada uno como ser humano es diferente, así es nuestro maíz. Por eso es prácticamente nosotros nos consideramos hijos del maíz, porque cada maíz es distinto, el sabor es distinto, el color es distinto. Y todo este maíz que vemos se está perdiendo hasta la actualidad, se está muriendo por otras especies o por un maíz que están genéticamente modificando. La diferencia entre del maíz, nosotros lo conocemos como el elote. Si ustedes han comido algún día un rico elote fresco, nosotros a esa le llamamos elote. Estas que miran ustedes en la foto, nosotros los llamamos mazorcas, porque es un elote seco. Y al desgranar el maíz, pues la mazorca nosotros llamamos maíz, y ese es nuestro maíz, cual hacemos diferentes comidas, y el grano y la semilla con la que sembramos. ¿Por qué es importante conservar el maíz? Podemos pasar a la siguiente slide. Porque al igual como las semillas, si las dejamos de sembrar, se pierde ese maíz. Así es igual como nosotros, si nosotros dejamos de existir, no vuelve a haber otra persona, ¿no? Nosotros somos únicos y el maíz así es, porque es de los granos más antiguos de la humanidad. 2, el maíz originario se está desapareciendo de nuestra comunidad por el capitalismo invasor. 3, es la mayor fuente de alimento de nuestras comunidades. Y creo que es muy importante conservar a nuestro maíz porque es la fuente, en una de los pueblos originarios, la fuente de ingreso, la fuente de alimentos de ellos, porque nosotros lo que tradicionalmente es, lo que sembramos es maíz y su hermana, que es la calabaza y el frijol. Entonces, las tres hermanas son las principales semillas de lo que es de parte de México y parte de lo que es, que es Guatemala, Honduras, Salvador, todas esas partes que siembran todavía maíz y frijol y calabaza. Nosotros es nuestro primer fuente de alimento. Y así como podemos pasar la siguiente slide. Bueno, la vida es un ciclo y así el maíz nace y muere, pero si deja de sembrar, desaparece. Estamos hablando que también tenemos uno de los principales como obstáculos de que nuestro maíz esté desapareciendo o que son el maíz transgénico, a cual variedad de maíz modificado mediante técnicas de ingeniería genética para que esas empresas vengan a nuestras tierras, a nuestros pueblos, nos los traigan y nos digan que es mejor genéticamente porque no aguanta más como las plagas, es mejor para sembrar y es como salen maíces como mazorcas más grandes o producto mucho mejor. Entonces están modificando todo eso y también nos están haciendo un daño a nuestra tierra porque está contaminando nuestra tierra, así como sembramos la semilla transgénico, automáticamente la semilla originaria que sembramos adopta ese gen y se modifica. Entonces, así como las empresas grandes como, bueno, ya sabemos, ¿no? Unas de las más populares, y no sé si conozcan a Monsanto, a Rand, que los pueblos están luchando para que salgan de nuestros pueblos y dejen de contaminar nuestras aguas. No sé, entonces lo que queremos es tener tierras libres de pesticidas, de fertilizantes químicos que puedan afectar a nuestros suelos y maten a nuestro ecosistema, porque nosotros al sembrar el maíz, no nada más nos estamos alimentando nosotros como pueblo, sino también estamos, que se vengan a polinizar las abejas, las mariposas, y creo que una de las más afectadas han sido las mariposas monarcas, en esta parte de que están en peligro de extinción y ciertos polinizadores que pueden perder, como las abejas también. Entonces alteran todo lo que es nuestro ecosistema, no nada más afectan nuestra tierra. ¿Podemos pasar a la siguiente? Nosotros al sembrar y tener una tierra con buenos nutrientes, y para mí es uno de los, creo que sentirme muy orgullosa de preparar y tener la oportunidad de preparar abono, porque el abono es uno de los fuentes de nutrientes para nuestra tierra, ya que estamos aquí en Arizona. Hay que ser conscientes de que Arizona es desierto y no tenemos una de las tierras más fértiles y que también sufrimos de agua. Entonces, tener pues sí, porque uno como ser humano tiene ese balance en nuestras manos de poder, qué es lo que le damos a nuestra tierra. Entonces, al preparar con nutrientes y saber lo que tiene la composta y sembrar esa semilla y verla crecer y verla crecer bonita, verde, por sus solos nutrientes, y tener ese poder de que alguien la va a consumir y va a recibir vitaminas, minerales en lugar de enfermedades, es muy importante. Y aquí, como les puse una foto de las mariposas, porque son las que más llegan a nuestras plantas, a nuestros vegetales que dan flor, a nuestras granjas. Y tenemos que ser como ese ciclo que les decía, ¿no? Nosotros las sembramos, las nutrimos, vienen los polinizadores, nos ayudan y damos a las personas que puedan consumir eso. Y también es importante que nuestros hijos participen en ese ciclo para que ellos sepan, y así como uno cosecha lo que siembra, también nosotros podamos dar a nuestra tierra. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. La solidaridad. ¿Qué tan importante es trabajar en equipo, en comunidad, en el aprendizaje que nos llevamos en las granjas? Y también creo que es uno de los principales trabajos de nuestros pueblos, que siempre ha trabajado en eso, y es una de las enseñanzas que nosotros, como nos consideramos indígenas, siempre en nuestros pueblos, siempre somos solidarios. Todos sembramos nuestras tierras, tenemos convivencia, compartimos nuestros alimentos. Si alguien llega a nuestra casa, nosotros tratamos de servirle lo mejor que puede y atenderlo como nuestra familia. Y eso es una mayor que traemos nosotros, ser parte de esa comunidad, de crecer juntos y no ser más ni menos. Todos somos uno. Y lo importante de compartir nuestras comidas, nuestras tradiciones, de tener, como les decía, que estamos perdiendo de contar historias, de tener eso, de contarle la historia, cómo nace el maíz, por qué es esto. Es importante porque el maíz, como nosotros somos como una semilla de la planta, del maíz. Si nosotros no sembramos el maíz, nosotros dejamos de existir. Y así, si nosotros dejamos de transmitir eso a nuestros hijos van a perder eso. Entonces, que vivimos en un lugar donde es el trabajo, del trabajo a la casa, la escuela, que no hay una vida de poder conectar más con la naturaleza, porque es el estrés de que si no pagas la renta o ciertas cosas, más si eres de una comunidad que es afectada por ciertas leyes que no te permiten hacer ciertas cosas que quisieras hacer o tener ese miedo. La comunidad te da esa seguridad, y yo soy bendecida por pertenecer a una comunidad muy solidaria, conocer, porque yo crecí con la comunidad y he aprendido con la comunidad. Entonces es importante tener esa transmisión. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. Okay. En esta parte, si quieres pasar a la siguiente. No. Aquí la comunidad es muy importante porque le transmitimos, y también hablar sobre nuestras raíces. Ahorita, si ven, puse unas plantitas ahí y busqué el significado de raíces. ¿Qué es raíces? Y creo que van a decir, bueno, ¿por qué está hablando de las raíces, no? Porque es la principal fuente de alimento de la planta, y así nosotros también. Es el órgano de la planta que a ver, vamos a ver, que le sirve, que es el órgano de la planta que alimenta el tallo y le sirve de sostén para absorber los nutrientes de la tierra, los minerales, el agua que es necesaria para ella. Es importante para el crecimiento de la planta y para su desarrollo. Entonces, para nosotros, cuando hablamos de raíz y raíces, es una palabra combinada, porque el significado de raíces es el origen de una persona, el tallo familiar, y y de qué lugar proviene. Entonces es importante, nosotros tenemos una conexión con las plantas, lo que es el maíz que les estaba comentando, que tiene hermanas que la ayudan a crecer y que la ayuden a nutrir lo que es para poder desarrollarse mejor. Así nosotros también tenemos un tallo familiar que nos da nutrientes, nos da sabiduría, y como los abuelos nos enseñaron a nuestros padres, así nuestros padres nos enseñaron a nosotros, y así nosotros debemos enseñarle a nuestros hijos lo que es el significado de la comunidad, de sus raíces, de lo importante es de vivir en un planeta o un lugar que sea comunidad y que sea amigable al medio ambiente. Entonces es lo que se hace al trabajar con las granjas y a trabajar con la tierra y aprender a cuidar las plantas. Pasamos a la siguiente. Entonces es muy importante conservar tu cultura. La mayor herencia que te pueden dar tus ancestros, tus abuelos, tus antepasados, es tu cultura, porque tenían la sabiduría de crecer las plantas, conocían y valoraban esa importancia de tener esa comunión con la naturaleza, de tener esa comunión con los animales, de tener ese poder de comunicarse y mirar las estrellas y saber que algo iba a pasar, de la lluvia, de salir cuando estaba lloviendo, cuando venían las lluvias grandes. Recordar todo eso y volver nosotros como seres humanos a reconocer eso es la mayor importancia que tenemos que hacer. Porque si uno hace un trabajo vacío, no puede dejar ese conocimiento, no va a llegar a las demás personas. Yo siempre miro esta imagen y en la esquina está una niña mirando las semillas. Y me encanta porque las está mirando con esa con ternura, y está aprendiendo. Entonces, a esa niña nunca se le va a olvidar el día que conoció una semilla, vamos a decir, ¿no? Que sembró esa plantita y la miró crecer y vio que pudo alimentar a otra persona. Así somos nosotros, poder germinar esa semilla en nosotros para poder polinizar a los demás es importante. Así eran nuestros ancestros, de madre a hija y de hija, así durante generaciones, y eran civilizaciones que tenían mucho conocimiento y que tienen mucho conocimiento y que saben de la tierra. Entonces es algo que no es algo nuevo y que decimos, ay, es algo, ¿cómo se le llama? De moda o situación que estamos creando y que vamos a hacer. No, es algo que ya nuestros ancestros han hecho y que estamos volviendo a jalar eso. Entonces nosotros, como nos consideramos indígenas, mexicanos, en nuestras tierras, hay que volver a tener ese poder de conocimiento de nuestras tierras y de nuestros climas. Hay que regenerarnos y regenerar a nuestra madre tierra. Entonces podemos pasar a la siguiente, por favor. Los alimentos es fundamental, porque también ¿qué nos llevamos a la boca, no? Tenemos costumbres, tradiciones, comidas ancestrales, cosas que preparaban nuestros abuelos, que a veces se nos ha olvidado, ¿no?, de hacerlos, pero hay que traerlos otra vez. Y creo que si nosotros podemos llevarnos a la mesa un alimento que digamos que es sano, pero si está sembrado con fertilizantes que afectan al medio ambiente, que están afectando quieras o no, pues ellos dicen que no afectan a la planta ni al ser humano, pero de ese poquito a poquito se han visto muchas enfermedades nuevas, cosas que nosotros mismos nos llevamos a la boca porque los alimentos están contaminados por capitalismo es a esas grandes empresas que quieren conquistar y lo único que miran es dinero y no miran a quién dañan. Entonces, los alimentos son importantes, alimentos ancestrales, alimentos que hemos compartido y que han compartido nuestros abuelos. Hay que empezar a compartir y hay que empezar a hacer y mirar qué es lo que estamos comiendo, a quién le estamos comprando los alimentos. Aquí en Tucson hay muchas granjas que están vendiendo sus productos que ellos siembran y que tienen sus abonos y todo eso. Entonces, apoyarlos. Y nada más, pasa la siguiente y ya voy a cerrar para que eso es lo que le puedo yo compartir. Esos son los alimentos de que mis abuelos me han enseñado. Mi abuela, mi abuela creció a sus hijos vendiendo estos alimentos. Y ahí tenemos una hoja del maíz que para reciclar o eso, lo otro, ahí están, ahí miren las hojas y siempre nosotros hemos utilizado eso. Yo recuerdo que todavía a mí me daban en hoja de plátano los quesos, entonces yo soy de Oaxaca, soy de una parte de que hay mucho de dónde poder aprovechar, entonces tenemos esa cultura y pues traerla y compartirla. Y pues muchas gracias. Entonces, no sé, las preguntas las dejamos al último.
Muchísimas gracias, Mónica, tu presentación muy linda. Si tienen preguntas, por favor pónganlas en el chat y si vamos a contestarlas después de las otras presentaciones. Our next presenter is Joshua Preston. Let me pull up. Are you able to share your screen, Joshua?
No, I'm not able to.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna guide you through or you can guide me through your slides.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Skukutam juk oni object Joshua Preston oni object walk. My name is or good afternoon. My name is Joshua Preston and I'm from the Walk District, also known as the San River District of the Thermalization Nation. For 240 years or so, the United States has been in existence. Since its creation, indigenous tribes waged war and made treaties with the country, not only the United States, but also other European countries such as Britain and France, and even Mexico. What a lot of American children are taught in schools is the manifest destiny that the European immigrants were promised by God, that these were their land, they were promised it. But for me, growing up, knowing that we lived here for a long time, I couldn't understand that that way of thinking of them being, the principle. Theodore Roosevelt once said the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And another quote that comes to mind too is kill the Indian, save the man. That was the Captain Richard Pratt. And the reason why is because if you kill the Indian, the child has no knowledge of what was and what could be. If you can't kill the Indian, they'll discover will and power. Departments like the BIA, Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management were all meant to separate tribal nations. I think the most dangerous word an Indian can learn is sovereignty. Next slide, please. So sovereignty to Indigenous people is not only the freedom to govern ourselves, but also to be self-sustainable and provide security for ourselves. These are just examples of what the Indigenous people describe as sovereignty. For over 140 years, tribes were not even considered to be citizens of their own homelands. They were described as Indian savages. It wasn't until the Citizen Act of 1924 where we granted citizenship that helped fight World War I with our languages, and then again in World War II. Before, we were confined to reservations since 1851 by the Appropriations Act. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson paved the way for Western exploration with the Indian Removal Act, which many died moving from place to place. The Dawes Act of 1887 created allotments meant to grow crops, then sell back to the American population. But not everybody was, not every tribe planted. Some were hunting tribes. Although many laws and policies changed throughout history, the 1970 Self-Determination Act signed into law by Richard Nixon was the most important. Next slide, please. We gave the authority to tribes to govern themselves and the freedom to be ourselves. Another important law of that decade was the Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, where before it was illegal to practice ceremony. Through these various acts created Indigenous activism such as Indian Collective, Native Organizers Alliance, Braveheart Society, Indivisible Autumn, and among many others. One of the most known activist group is the American Indian Movement, which was created in the 1970s to assert Native rights everywhere. The organizations mentioned work in different areas of sovereignty. NOA was initially created to address the healthcare promise that the United States government promised Indian country. They're now committed to uniting all Native organizers in every aspect of sovereignty, whether you work in tribal government or you're working on farming or you're working on animals or the land. Like, they're looking for people like that to join their organization. The Indian Collective also supports various other issues. One that I found most interesting was this, I can't say it in Lakota, but it's like a security group. They still deal with like the white supremacists, and so they have their men patrol the land, which is pretty cool, I thought. Up here that I have are some things that we practice to assert our sovereignty. Yeah, we try to hold the U.S. accountable to the treaties, and we're trying to make the decisions on our own. Issues such as healthcare, education, food, economics, and sustainability are just some of the recent things we took control of. Our healthcare was once Indian Health Services, now it's Stone Autumn Healthcare, which is a big win for us, I think, because now we have to say like, to buy our medicines and, you know, buy medical supplies. Our education system is no longer controlled by the BIA. We can now implement our own curriculum. And actually there's a group of Donaldson teachers, language teachers, that got together to get certified as actual language teachers, which was not really done before. There were some tribes that did it in the past, but it's a huge step for us because now we can, teach it in our schools, and other schools, if they wanted to, can go off of our curriculum. We've also created farms dedicated to traditional crops to address our food deserts. For me, I don't really live in a food desert. I live on the Xavier Indian Reservation, which is pretty close to Tucson. And since it's pretty close to Tucson, I don't have a problem getting to food, whereas other people on the nation have a harder time getting food, traveling over 50 miles, maybe 70 miles to get their food. Another important act that I think was pretty important was the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988, because then that gave us revenue and made us, I guess, say like we get to decide what we want to spend our money on. Before, it was controlled all by the government, and they decided on like what we needed. We voiced our opinions, but it was like saying, no, we know what you need, so that's what you're gonna get. But now that we have like casinos and other types of businesses, we're able to support ourselves and support programs such as the Xavier Cooperative Farm. It also gives us the ability to focus on being more self-sustainable and creating a future for our next generation, which again before was uncertain, but now that we have that power to say what we do want and what we don't want, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we've only had control of ourselves for the past 70 years or so. So like by the time my grandmother was born, that's when Native American tribes finally were able to, determine what they want to do with their land, with their people. Next slide, please. One of the issues we all face as tribal nations is food sovereignty. When the Europeans came, we already had our food systems and trading routes. We weren't as, I guess, naked and afraid as American history says we were. We already had our things going. The pictures that I have right here on the left is pod, which is squash. It's an autumn squash. But they're small and call translate to a squash. They like those cut to it easily. These ones, they develop a hard skin, and what we've been doing is each harvest we come in and we pick out a squash and we put it to the side for seed. These squash will either go to the store or go to the kitchen for processing. On the right was a while back, one of our friends that come from Second Mesa had brought over some food, and he's a really good farmer. I mean, one of the best farmers I've ever seen, honestly, and his name is Chris Houdani. And it was just cool to see like how he brought out his food, and we ate it, and like peaky bread, and like that's sweet corn right there on the right that was roasted in a pit. So what I've always hear when traveling around to different conferences and different tribal nations is like there's no sovereignty without food sovereignty. And I think a lot of us don't really know what that means. I mean, I think we all can connect to a cheeseburger and say that's American. But as often we connect to the squash, and like we've been cultivating it for years, along with the cherry beans and corn. And whereas on the right, Chris Hunani, his people have been doing that for years in their certain way, and that's what makes them Hopi. And our way of growing and cooking makes us awesome. Next slide, please. Donaldson Nation and agriculture. We've been doing it forever. Like I said, that's one of the ways that make awesome is by farming their foods. We've been doing it forever. And when you hear, I guess, Native Americans say like we're older than time, the concept of time, we're older than what we call ourselves, because when the Europeans came over, we didn't really have a name for ourselves. So for those of us that live in Pima County, actually it's an Alton word. It's Spimach, which means I don't know. So every time the conquistadors would ask them like, "What is this?" It'd be Spimach. What do you call yourselves? Spimach. Like, like we didn't know what they were talking about, so they called us Pimas, and then they called the northern relatives Pimas, and they called us Papago down here. But that was also another important thing that happened during the 1980s is when we switched our names from Papago to Don Alton, which we felt was more fitting. As I mentioned, we heavily focus on agriculture, and the Santa Vera district, we were a main trading source for different nations. Traditionally, all of them have like two homes, a winter home and a summer home. Your summer home, you would plant all your plants and stay there and then harvest and then take it to your winter home. And then during your winter, you're out wild harvesting and hunting. And it just goes on that cycle. And from my understanding, there were only two autumn seasons, which were summer and winter, and nothing really in between. We were considered pretty advanced, knowing that we produce food in the desert in the middle of nowhere. Right here is I have our field, our pea fields, and if you can see in the background on the right, there's Black Mountain, which is a traditional or sacred mountain. In the middle, we have our tribal government offices, and on the left, we have the Santa Vera Mission Church. So to me, it's crazy like how much history is just like right there in the background. The Autumn, which have been here forever, and their lands, and that's how we connect to I guess being Autumn, just knowing that there's no other place there for us. Like this is it. This is home. And then showing in the middle like how far we've come. You know, there's not many tribal nations that have offices like this. And then on the left, you have that church, which I think symbolizes the history and the survivability of our people. Back then, we've had grown various types of corn and beans. I remember Fonz at one time, he was the one that was telling me that, yeah, did you know there's like over 16 varieties of chicory beans that you guys grew? And I didn't know that. And I was surprised that he knew that. So it was cool for him to drop knowledge on me like that. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing place to me to work and to live here. Next slide, please. So here again, this is how I'd say we like practice our sovereignty and building with external allies. On that far left picture is our sunflower field, and those sunflowers come from around Indian country. John Morgan, who is our person at the farm, he's been working with many different tribal nations and them throughout his years. And last year we did a grow out for him, and we still have yet, but this is just a recent one. That was, I believe it was a 10-acre field of just sunflowers. And in the middle, we have our heritage autumn peas, which means they're introduced at one point to us as Donna Autumn. Like I said, we weren't known for growing that much in the winter. And when they brought this over, we started growing it and made it to what it is today. On the far right, our cattle, we have a cattle association here, and it's basically different types of families that own a brand, and they're coming together to take out these cattle, which are kind of a nuisance to not only the farm, but to the community as well. Next slide, please. So agriculture today on the Donaldson Nation is thriving, I'd say. I mean, at one point, there was at least only 3% of the nation that wasn't used for farming, 35%. And we're the size of Connecticut. But due to the removals, wars, we just fear for our lives. We just didn't have time to farm. But today, there's not only the Santa Vera Co-op farm, but there's also Ajo Sustainability, who we partner with from time to time. They come out and help us plant, and we exchange knowledge. They have a community garden out in Ajo, and they help other community members make their gardens. We also have Donaldson Community College, which they do grow outs too on traditional crops. They not only teach the traditional way of farming, but also how to make it more modern. And how to make it thrive more. We also have a Donald Farming Authority, I believe, which has different farms throughout the nation. One of them is Poncho Farms, and they usually do like the bean grow outs and other types of traditional crops. And another one that they grow, I think, is in cells, and their cash crop is alfalfa. But we have this group called the Farm Food and Working Group, and it's all of the farms on the nation together that want to do something. The food known want to bring back these traditional ways of cooking and explore and learn from different tribal nations. Fonz has been great help. Recently, he had invited us to make masa for tamales, and we processed it. They tried it on the 60-day corn. I'm not really sure how it came out. Next slide, please. So the Xavier Co-op Farm was created by us. It was years of organizing, coming together, figuring out what we wanted to do. Xavier is located near the Santa Cruz River also, and that's why we didn't need to move that much, is because the water was just right there. We could irrigate it, make canals, and actually in our fields we can still see the canals in there. But now we're more modern, and we have irrigation systems in the ground. And the reason why we do that, we don't have a river anymore, is because Tucson sucked up our water, and we couldn't do anything. Actually, at the Xavier Co-op, we have an old water tank, and it has Maricopa County on it, and that's how we get our water. That was probably back in the 20s, 30s, and it continued on until like the 70s. And we, along with the Donald Nation, and I think it was the federal government, sued the city of Tucson, and we said, like, it's not right that you guys stole our water, and we can't really provide for ourselves. And so it was a long battle, and we won, and we got so many acres of water that we kind of really didn't know what to do with it. So what we did was we created different organizations to monitor it and also try to use it. And one of those creations was the Xavier Cooperative Farm. This picture on the left is really cool, I think, because that's Jamie and Encinas, and she has done a lot of artwork in the community. And she's also a supervisor at the store, and she's been there for many years, so she has a lot of knowledge. On the right is her nephew, Samuel Lopez, and he keeps coming back every year to work in food production. This is a pretty old picture, but this was what we envisioned at one point, was to be able to provide for ourselves and to employ our own people. And another cool thing is that the farm that we work on is basically our family's land. This was a result of the Dawes Act of 1887, of why there are certain families that have land. And then on the right, I have a picture of a bee and corn. We do have the bees on the farm and that make honey. We have a bee guy that comes out every so often to check up on his bees. And it was pretty cool to see that bee like collecting the pollen off of the corn. I stood there for about a good 5 minutes just trying to hold my hand still to get the picture.
¿Me escuchan las personas que hablan español?
So
I'm working on it. I'm trying.
So
Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
My job right now is a irrigation operator. So I deal with the water. I directly have to figure out where to send the water. And one of my main goals as irrigation is to get it to food when they want it, because in the end, that was the goal for the farm, was to bring back those traditional crops. Our cash crop is still alfalfa, but we do at one point want food production to be able. Hear me?
Yes, we
Hello?
can hear you now.
Okay. So as I was saying, we wanted the food production to be able to provide from themselves and create revenue, which is something that we're working for. There's other farms that are doing it already. Please. This is just a glimpse of what we worked on this summer. We've done 30 acres of food. And we increased each next year, or this coming up year, they're gonna bump it up to 60 acres. And their plan is to plant, I think it was 30 acres of corn. When I was on food production, our seed stock was very low. I think we only had like 100 or 300 pounds. And when we harvested, there weren't many kernels on it. And it was kind of like defeating, and we started rolling seeds out and collecting and looking at cobs to see which ones were good to save back for seed. And now we have so much corn, we don't know what to do with it. I think we harvested about, I want to say almost 2 tons of just 60-day corn. And we still have a field out there that we need to get to, which is the one on the left. On the right is the start of our pea fields. I think it's important to note that not many Indigenous farms have the tools that we do, and we're very lucky to have them. Next slide, please. So again, our cash crop is alfalfa, and that's on the far left. So another important part for, okay. So in the middle, again, is our sunflower field, and where it kind of started off with at, and it was just like on the edge of the field, and that was to keep try to keep pollen in instead of it going out. So we created a wall of sunflowers to block it. On the right, again, is another tractor, and it's pulling a seeder. which we use to plant alfalfa and grains. Next slide. So another important part of our work is to try to get the youth involved and to educate others and to educate ourselves. What I like to say is I get paid to be awesome. I get paid to study how we live, and I get paid to try to make it better and make it work today. And I, along with the other 20 or so employees at the farm, do that every day. There's only about, I would say, 2 to 3 people that aren't Donald. The rest are from the nation or from the district. On the right, we have a picture of processing prickly pear. And we usually have workshops every year, but due to the pandemic, we weren't able to. And we teach them how to process it because we came upon that problem of like, no one knows what to do with these foods. They don't know how to eat it. They don't know how to process it. They don't know what it is. So at one point, marketing said, well, let's try to make a workshop and try to get people to come and try it out and learn about the foods. And that's what's happening today. We're trying to wait for nation orders to, I guess, fully open up so we can have workshops like that again. We also had a buyback program for cholla buds, also known as Jordan. And that was for community members so they can make money off of harvesting cholla buds. And is called the pay by the pound program, and we offer like an X amount of money per pound that they bring in. And that way, some of us then had to go out and harvest it ourselves because there are certain times that you have to harvest them and process these foods. You can't just go out any time of day and start harvesting and processing it because it's not gonna come out right. Next slide. So I think a good way to end this off is to know there is still, I guess, we're still here. We're alive, we're thriving, and because we practice our sovereignty, people in the country and their ways. These are just
connection messed up a little bit.
what's that?
The connection messed
Alright,
up a little bit. You got like a little lag.
Do I?
A little bit, yeah.
Good now?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we're still here, we're still thriving. Due to my grandparents and other people's grandparents, they gave me the opportunity to travel around Indian country and discover all these things about how these other people process their foods and how we can all work together to try to bring it back, try to cook like this again and eat these certain foods or these traditional foods. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Joshua, for your presentation. Our next presenter, Fonz, can you share your screen?
Sure can.
Okay.
What's up, y'all? How's it going? No one toca Alfonso Chavez. I go by Fonz. And I'm gonna show you all a quick video and we'll go from there. So this is a collective that I belong to called Flowers and Bullets. And with limited time, I always find it a little bit easier that we can use video to get things across. So peep this.
Need a place to push my stroller with my kid, or I just need a place where I can walk my dog. And then slowly folks started to like really envision, you know, a green space.
For a long time, Flowers and Bullets was just focused on backyard gardens, house meetings, meetings at the park, celebrations at the park, until we're able to get this place. This place closed down in 2004 as an abandoned elementary school. And it was important to us because back in those days, this elementary school used to be 2 meals a day for our kids, used to be youth sports, used to be employment.
So it's always been like this kind of hub in the neighborhood. And since it's been shut down, we haven't had anything like that here. We don't really have like community centers and gathering places and things like that. When the opportunity came to lease this space, we just jumped on it.
We were able to mobilize to get this school in 2015, 2016, when we just got a letter at our door. The letter on our door said that Penske, the trucking company, was gonna buy this land and make it into a parking lot. And to us, that didn't really sit well because we're born and raised here. And we already have the train yard right behind us. We have the Air Force Base coming in and out. We have the planes flying overhead all day. And now we're gonna have semis coming in and out of the neighborhood. So it goes back into those environmental issues that we're trying to address here. And we want to start using crop production, food, art as history to be able to talk about like our past, to be able to talk about our culture, our traditions. We're born and raised here. So when we look out those windows and we see those people who are doped out walking around, those are our friends. Those are people that we went to school with. These are people that we grew up with. So it's not just a job. It's not just a hobby. This is more of a responsibility for us. We know that if we don't do this in our community, we don't do this in Central, nobody's gonna come in and save the day. We're in the middle of the hood. To be able to see this green space, to see all this vegetation, all these crops, all this produce growing, that's resistance to us.
Whoa, where am I? Cool. All right, y'all. Now let me try to get my bearings with how to show this without slideshow. Right? No? Play from start. There we go. Cool. So that's just a little background of our collective, Flowers and Bullets. And so the way we see it, you know, flowers are the beauty and the bullets are the struggle, you know? And so, you know, with the struggle and the complications that take place in our communities, from underserved communities, disenfranchised communities, communities that, you know, deal with poverty and things of that sort, you have all of these complications, you know, and it's like drug addiction, it's a lack of access to healthy and whole foods, you know, what people call a food desert, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, you know, all these things, just little access to just resources in general. And so this is why we find it important to find ways to create access to these resources, you know? And so Flowers and Bullets has kind of become a central hub within that neighborhood, Barrio Centro, to create space and also to bring these resources and also become more sustainable and allow our folks to grow our own food, to harvest our own water, to share our own stories, practice our own cultures, learn about the land and be a part of the land, you know, join in ceremony and help out with animal husbandry, food processing, animal processing, and all of these things that coincide and come together to create what we hope to be the future of our communities, you know? And so, now a bit about my story is,
Just to stop you there, we're not seeing your slides. We still see your YouTube.
okay. Dang, I had a whole good little thing going too. All right, give me 1 sec. 1 sec. Let me stop the share. Let me start the share again. It should be this guy. All right. Could you see now?
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, y'all. This is the only slide you missed, which is my favorite. It's just my face. Just kidding. Moving on. So, I started off working, you know, doing work. Initially, I was very involved with the ethnic studies department, which was a cultural education component to the Tucson Unified School District. That's where I got engaged. That's where I started doing a lot of this work. I started getting involved with community activism and just community work in general that kind of, you know, navigated me to all these different realms and learning myself and learning more about who I am and my community and how I could be a part of that, a better component of that. And so I had the opportunity to complete a Vista service, which is AmeriCorps Vista volunteer service that I was able to dedicate a year's worth of my services to San Javier Co-op Farm. And so that's cool that, you know, Josh kind of breaks down some of the things of that community and the work that we do there. I actually work with Josh. And so I've known him for a couple of years now and we do great work together. So this is these are just some of the images that I've gathered over the years working on the farm there. And so, you know, as Josh mentions, there's really only 2 seasons in Tucson or in Arizona at large, which is how we consider it's either hot or it's cold, you know. Other places, you know, you see a lot of these transitions, but with us, it's very drastic and very immediate. And so we operate in ways of like hot season and cool season. So you'll see kind of a mix of those things. We have like the broccoli that was harvested a couple years back, the green chilies, and then you see the hot squash, which is the traditional autumn squash that Josh was speaking on earlier as well. And then in the kind of in the bottom middle picture that you see is Chris, who Josh spoke about as well, who is a great farmer and has done a lot with many communities here in Arizona. But that was a squash giveaway that we did to the community. We ended up having a really good squash harvest and we ended up with more than you know what we could even think to do with. So we gave it to community. You know, we don't want to see our foods go to waste. We want to help strengthen the connection with people and their traditional foods, and so that kind of seemed most ideal. And so we pulled off to the side on an easement, put up a sign, and then and there was when we made the decision to do so. We weighed it out and we gave away around 600 pounds of squash, which was about all that I could fit in my truck bed at the time, which is my little, it's a F-150 long bed. And so that was one of the cool things that I was able to be a part of there. And then you see like an image of our tepary beans. And so I completed that service a couple years back. And then after the completion of that, I went to school for a bit. It was a 1-year service. And then I was contacted more recently to join as part of the staff. So there was a position opening for nursery coordinator. And so that's my title currently. And that's what I do for the farm there, the San Javier Co-op Farm Nursery Coordinator. And, you know, I have the privilege of being one of those initial steps and the long domino effect of what it takes to feed communities, you know, and it starts with putting a seed down, you know, and then from that moment on, it goes to the food production crew who will go out, we'll put that in the ground and we'll nurture these plants in which we have a very strong connection to, you know, and the energy that we put into these plants, there's the energy and like literal energy, but also like, you know, beyond that, the energy that we put into the work that we do with the love that we share and the care for this plant, these plants and these forms of nature. And so I'm very happy to do this work that I continue to do today. And so, whoops, what do I gotta do? Okay. And so now moving back to Flowers and Bullets. So I'm lucky enough to be a part of both of these collectives. So this is the organization that you saw me speak on, or that you saw play in the video. And so Flowers and Bullets is a collective that I joined, I want to say around 2000 and maybe around 2014. And so with this community here, you know, just as I mentioned earlier, is a community that struggles with all of these complications within disenfranchised communities. You also have like industrialization that takes a big part in that. And so this place that we function out of, that's a community farm space for crop production, was initially, as mentioned in the video, was an elementary school. And so the reason that it went under, because it's been an abandoned school, it had been an abandoned school for years and years. And that's because it lies within the flight path of an Air Force base, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. And so they perceived it to be a risk to have a school within that flight path of ascending and descending aircraft. And so they closed it down. From then on, it became a community center, a voting center, and things of that sort. And over time, people started moving into that space. People spend a lot of time there, but it was for more unhealthy purposes, you know, people that had drug addictions and other complications. And so that abandoned space started transforming, and people started witnessing that in the community. And so there was a moment where it was going to be bought out because it had been just sitting there for so long, and it was going to be a parking lot for Penske. And someone interjected at a meeting, it was an elder, and they mentioned, you know, this isn't something that we want. Why not do something that's more beneficial for the community? Why not do something with these kids? Because at the time we were kids, not so much these days. But you know, it was kind of intimidating because we had done this work where we were doing a lot of backyard gardens. We were initially, as we started off, our way of generating revenue for our work was through merch sales. So our collective is also made up of artists within the community. So people that do graffiti artists, street art, digital art, things of that sort, we're able to incorporate into this larger vision that we have for this community organization. And so we do community murals, we'd make t-shirts, we'd make hats, we'd make sweaters, all these merch items that we would sell at pop-ups. And that revenue would go towards the work that we did in the community for purchasing, as you see, like a water harvest tank. We were doing water harvest installs that we still continue to do. And the workshops that we do, the art workshops and the programming and things of that sort. And so there, as an organization, you know, it was suggested that we submit a proposal of our own so that we can acquire this land and continue the work that we were doing in the community. And it was intimidating, you know, it was a big step for us, but we figured, you know, we're doing this work for a reason. And if that's the request of community, then, you know, that's what it is. And so we submitted a request of our own, and we actually were selected to lease that property, to move into that property and do this work. And so now we're a couple years in. We've expanded. We continue to do this work, but at maximum potential, at least more potential. There's always room to expand and grow. But with the crew that we have that's so dedicated, and many of us who volunteer our time, we're able to continue installing these water tanks for people to harvest rainwater, to help them save on their bills and to be more sustainable, and so that's a program that we offer, and it comes at no cost to folks who are part of that program that live in that area. We also grow food for the community, fruit too, that we offer through various other programs, even supplying restaurants and places in the area, but also allowing community to come and do U-pick services. So you pick it, we weigh it, you take it, and so that's just another one of the ways that we work to support community. And you also have our art program. So you see in the bottom center picture there was a mural project that we did in collaboration with community and youth. And we took all these suggestions at a neighborhood fiesta that we had, and people wrote up, what they wanted to see in their community more of on this big butcher paper that we spread out. And as an art crew, at the time I was the art crew coordinator, we took those suggestions, we sat down and we kind of worked through them all and decided, like what we could incorporate in what. And we're able to get enough suggestions to do multiple murals within the neighborhood, all incorporating those suggestions from community. So this is one of those projects that you see there. And then that's me holding one of our chickens. So this is some of the artwork that we do. The mural that we were painting with youth in the last slide is what you'll see on the bottom left, just another moment in time from that work, that piece of work. And just above that, you'll see some of the members from my crew, which was the art crew for Flowers and Bullets. And that was one of the largest murals that we took part in. That's at Monzo Elementary. They requested for us to work up a mural that was incorporating some of the traditional knowledge in agriculture that we work with. And so in the middle, you'll see like a depiction of the three sisters, which is the corn, the beans, and the squash. And you'll see the big squash, the big yellow squash down below, and you'll see the corn. And then you could see like a vine, like a bean vine kind of wrapping up its way up. That's one of my favorite, because not just is it huge, but every day kids go into that center because it's in a school and it's part of their food literacy program. And so as they're teaching kids about their gardens that they have at their school, they're also able to see this whole different component to that, which is the artwork. And it's breaking down the soil levels and the berms and all these different parts of farm work. And you see pollinators, you see root vegetables, and you see corn and all these other things. So I enjoy that one. Next to that, you see Tonantzin or Virgen de Guadalupe. And it's also kind of meshed with all this other symbolism, that has to do with traditional knowledge and culture. And you'll see the maíz, you'll see corn and the crown and the gown and all these different parts of that too. And so that's a mural that's done just in front of Flowers and Bullets Midtown Farm is what we call it. And then top right, you'll see that's a mural restoration project that I did that's on my side of town, which is in West Tucson. And so I was contacted by the original artist of this mural, who is David Tineo, and he requested that I do a restoration project to restore this mural from 1972. And so it was chipping, it was tagged on and things like that. And so we were brought in to restore that as a community project working with youth. And thankfully, when you work with community and you know, you're part of this culture and this work, people tend to respect that. And so this mural is still looking good as ever. And it's been a couple of years since then too. And down below are just a couple other murals that we completed. One is at the Boys and Girls Club. And then you see one of the younger ones with the mask down below, because they're doing some of the work with us there. And so this is basically a wrap, you know, kind of trying to show the work that I've done and what I'm a part of, but also just the many different ways that we can work together in unison to work with and for community and supporting each other. You know, it's kind of like that symbiotic relationship that we see a lot in nature, you know, how we can cross-pollinate and how we could come up with these different ideas, and sustainability and creating like healthier communities. It doesn't always have to be a single track thing. There's multiple different ways to get people engaged. And so that's one of the things that I kind of gravitate towards, because that's how my mind works. I'm a very hyperactive thinker. Some people may even call it ADHD, but you know, I'm always wanting to be a part of all of these different things that have to do with community. And I've been privileged to do that for these years that I have. And that, and I want to thank you all for having me and for considering me for this, and also invite you all to check out some of my other work, which is largely done on like my social media platform too. This isn't just flex or do anything like that, but just to invite you all to kind of check out my Instagram and my TikTok, because that's actually where I do a lot of my work as well. I do educational videos to show people how to become more sustainable, and how to do a lot of this work through like farming tips and things like that. I know that when I first started gardening or started getting into farming, one of the big things that I wish someone would show me is something that's a more simplified and quick to the point version. You know, a lot of this farming work, a lot of this agricultural industry or like gardening work, a lot of it takes time, which I appreciate too. But as I mentioned to you all, I'm a very fast paced, all over the place kind of person. And how a lot of this information was introduced to me was also very inaccessible. The language that's used, the terminology, the concepts, it all seemed foreign, you know, even though I have ancestral and cultural connections to these practices and foodways, it still felt distant to me. And so I kind of wanted to set out to create a platform to be able to inform people of the things that I'm still learning. Some of the information that I put up on here are things that like I've learned in the moment. And I'm like, you know, I have to relay this information. I think that a lot of people have this concept of ownership, which is an interesting way to see things, because realistically, we don't own much, own much, you know. We belong to the land and all of its inhabitants, and we're all part of this ecosystem, and we're here to share. And so that goes for knowledge and understanding as well. And so once again, thank you all for having me, for having us. And I'm happy and privileged to be a part of this project and share with you all.
Thank you very much, Fonz. Really appreciate your presentation, and really want to encourage folks to check you out on TikTok. I've been following you for a few months now, and really appreciate those little micro pieces of learning and sharing. Definitely something that I think the younger generation is kind of taking on. I just want to summarize a little bit and take a few minutes to answer any questions. Thank you, Monica, for your presentation, for reminding us how important it is to take care of our seeds and to take care of our soil. Gracias, Mónica, por compartir tu presentación y por hablar de la importancia de la semilla, del composte y del abono, y también de cómo, qué tan importante es no defender la cultura and also for stressing and stressing the importance of defending our culture. Joshua, thank you for that historical overview, right, and that historical background of sovereignty. That explanation really disrupts like the settler colonial history, and the way you present your work and how you're working the land is something that was like passed down, right, and by your ancestors, who I think you stressed the sophisticated irrigation systems that were already here, right, that were put in place before the settlers arrived and made, you know, the West what it is today, right? So just wanted to recognize that, and Fonz, again, recognizing your history, your art, right, and how the art is like telling the story, right, the history of resistance. And so I just wanted to share and kind of take away, share what my takeaways were from your presentations, and open it up for any questions that our guests may have.
Sure.
Do y'all see any questions in the chat box? Preguntas? Algunos tienen preguntas. I don't see anything in the chat box. We did lose a couple folks, but I guess to wrap it up, I do have a question.
Someone posted something in the chat box too.
Okay.
It was, what are your takes on vertical farming?
Okay.
How do we go about answering? Or yeah, how do we go about answering? I don't mind speaking on it if
Whoever has experience, or si alguien tiene experiencia con sembrando así como paredes verticales, así como sistemas hidropónicos, like hydroponics.
Yeah, I can throw a couple of things out if I can. I feel that, you know, we're at a point where, as we talk about disrupting like this colonial establishment and these colonial ways, an act has been done, and there needs to be balance that restores, you know. For instance, how Josh mentioned that the river has been ran dry through the development of the city, and there's that extracting that way of extraction. So how do we counteract that? And I think that San Javier Co-op Farm has beautifully exemplified how to counter that by redirecting other waterways through a flooding process to their farm. And so I kind of see it in a similar light. I think that because of this initial act, there has to be a counterbalance, you know? There is like deforestation as, you know, urban sprawl, as people are starting to move into all these different areas and take over all this land, and even agriculture is taking over so much land. And the majority of that food that's grown through agriculture goes to feeding pigs and all this other stuff. It goes mainly to feed. But I think that it's an ingenious idea. I don't know how sustainable it is as far as energy, you know, how much energy it requires to operate those operations and how much water. But I do think for space reasons, you know, it kind of counteracts the ways of you know, having to resort to deforestation and sprawling out at such like large quantities, where if we're able to grow upward, it's not as much of an issue in that way. So with like all things, there's pros and there's cons. And it's basically up to however you want to see things, you know.
Thank you, Fonz. Does anyone else have a take on it, or
Yeah. like for me, that's exciting because one, we've done it already. Like Indigenous people already have vertical gardens, but I don't know if Mr. Medina, if you remember, we actually did try to do vertical gardens at Changemaker High School. I remember the idea was to build them out of pallets and to put them along the pillars. And I'm not sure if it worked out, honestly, but I remember we're doing like research on how how it can be beneficial, saving water, easy access to your fruit, vegetable. But yeah, it was, those are, I guess, my thoughts on it and kind of experience with it.
Yeah, there's something about just working with the land, right, and the soil, and although the vertical gardens do like present like a beautiful cascade, sometimes I've seen some like really nice ones that can be like therapeutic. It's like maintenance. It's like constant maintenance. I remember just helping and with the aquaponics system that we had at Changemaker High School, and it was like it was a constant monitoring and maintenance, and it's not that the land doesn't require that, right? Because we do need to interact and engage with the land, but there's something more therapeutic, at least for me, and more of a connection to the land that you don't get the same experience and feeling with vertical gardens and growing indoors. Mónica, ¿gustarías compartir algo o quisieras responder a la pregunta?
Sí, bueno, lo que se me vino a la mente cuando dice de los horizontales, yo lo he querido implementar en la casa por el espacio, como estaban comentando, pero no es como el aquaponik, es sembrar. Bueno, es un sistema muy diferente, pero sí es como una opción, nada más como mencionan, necesita como más material, mantenimiento, una tierra que pueda tener los suficientes nutrientes como macetas. Y el aquaponic sí lleva mucho mantenimiento y sí se pone, tiene que tener luz y estar como un sistema como el pH controlado y todo eso, porque si no hay quien los observe, se sale de control toda la situación.
Sí, de acuerdo. There's another question there that I wanted to I think we kind of went over with time, but it'd be nice to finish with this question. What are you excited about for the future? ¿Qué estás emocionada para el futuro? O en este momento, if each panelist can share it, and then we'll conclude our meeting today. Mónica, ¿te gustaría compartir?
Para el futuro,
Sí.
creo que sí tener como seguir educando a nuestra comunidad y seguir aprendiendo, creo que es lo más grande, y también poder crear más jardines y darle las oportunidades a la comunidad que puedan tener sus espacios donde puedan plantar y sembrar y donde puedan tener, donde puedan acudir, porque, bueno, al menos aquí en Milpitas cubre ciertas necesidades de cierto barrio, pero no, igual como estamos barrio centro, no cubre ciertas necesidades del barrio, pero sí como rescatar esos jardines de otros barrios que están abandonados, sería como uno de los proyectos, creo que serían bien importantes. Y para mí, hacer trabajos pequeños, pero que sean impactantes para que durante los años que vengan sean fuertes y sean duraderos. Yo creo que sí.
Gracias. Voy a tratar de traducirlo lo más que pueda. What Monica was sharing is that she's excited for the future, educating our community, keeping these learning opportunities available to our community to encourage more spaces and ability to grow and to plant. Las Milpitas farm, for example, only covers one neighborhood. What about rescuing other abandoned gardens in other neighborhoods? I'm really looking forward to small projects, but impactful projects. Joshua, do you want to share your response?
Well, I'm very excited on not where only Thanatom Nation will be, but the rest of tribal nations will be in the future. As I said, some tribes aren't as advanced as others. So some of us are already ahead of the game, you know, already moving forward. We're trying to address our own ecosystem here at home and try to bring animals back and vegetation, and we have departments to fulfill those needs, and they're doing it, they're implementing it. One of the people over there is Sina Shalafi, and she comes from Tucson, and she's doing amazing work. She works with Alfonso all the time, and they're always talking about restoration. And we're planning an extension in the future at the farm, and it's going to be exciting seeing more produce for hay and seeing just where, I guess, our allies go too, such as Alfonso, other things like that's what it's been about the future.
Thank you, Joshua. Fonz, do you want to share your response?
Yeah. I'm excited for what the future holds for this movement, you know, that we're a part of, and not only doing the work of our own and restoring and you know, sustainability and the work within our own communities, but how that impacts, how do we unify and continue spreading this information. One thing that I'm excited for, like at San Javier, is we're currently starting a process of integrating niche thermalization. So it's just another practice, another traditional food practice that we can add to the arsenal of what we do with this food after we grow it, another way that we can process it. But at the same time, we're adding nutritional value. And so, you know, doing the process of adding the lime and turning it from niche tamal to like the masa, and then having this whole different variety of food options that we could do with this edible food source like corn. And sharing all of this information, you know, things that I've learned from working with San Javier. And that's why I say I love being a part of like all these different circles and doing all these different things, because it all intersects and it's all beneficial. Not just indigenous communities, but all communities of color and underserved, disenfranchised communities and folks, and seeing how we can support each other, how we could unify, what information we can share, you know. There's multiple different things that we come to face with, like, you know, maybe one community is experiencing a drought, you know, and maybe this community has experienced that in the past, and the way that they dealt with it is these certain ways, or this other area has a hard time engaging youth, which is something that this area or this community does. And so I'm really excited to see everything kind of continue, and also just sharing all of this wonderful work with one another, and being able to have access to platforms to share this stuff like here. So thank you all for bringing us all together.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Joshua and Fonz, for your time this evening, for your presentation. And I just want to let you know that all of your work is inspirational. And please continue to do the work. And please, if you're out there, thank you all the attendees. If you're there and you want to connect with us, you know, I'm happy to share the YouTube channel, and we can stay connected. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening. Adios.